Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking. Get those questions in. We'll get to all those, or most of those anyway, here in just a little bit. But first, guys, let's open up with one of the hottest topics right now, the coaching search. Blake Gideon obviously has left for Georgia Tech to be their defensive coordinator. Bobby, what's the latest there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a little digging last 24, 48 hours. And I spoke, actually texted with someone up at Notre Dame earlier this morning, about 15, 20 minutes ago. There's some real concern right now out of the Irish folks there. Mike Mickens, their defensive backfield coach, has been involved with the possible job at Texas. They have not heard yes or no yet from Mike Mickens. I'm not sure that Mickens has been offered the job yet by the Longhorns, but he certainly is someone of interest. Before he was at Notre Dame, he was also at Cincinnati, where he tutored someone by the name of Sauce Gardner, if you remember that name, one of the best defensive backs in the league. And he certainly turned that Notre Dame secondary into a force as well. He was the cornerbacks coach, just the cornerbacks coach at Notre Dame for the first 4 years there with Marcus Freeman and even Brian Kelly. Now he's become the entire defensive backfield coach. Again, we'll see what happens and what this means for the Longhorns. But Mike Mickens is a name to be aware of, and there is some concern in South Bend that he might be the next defensive backfield coach for the University of Texas. What does that mean for other coaches and other positions in the secondary at Texas? We shall see. Obviously, Terry Joseph is still the cornerbacks coach at Texas. But is Steve Sarkisian potentially looking to remake the entire secondary at this time with the departure of Blake Gideon as well as Nicholls coach Scotty Hazelton? We'll see what Sark comes up with and what it looks like overall. But Mike Mickens, defensive backfield coach out of Notre Dame, certainly someone that we're waiting to hear whether or not look, when I say the Irish are concerned, the Irish are concerned. So that should tell you and give you some feel for where it may be at with Texas right now.
It's Mickens has pretty much recruited all the corners at Notre Dame, by the way. Leonard Moore from Round Rock, obviously, who's got a bright future at Notre Dame. All those corners you've seen play at Notre Dame since he's been there. He has been the primary recruiter of all those guys. That includes in the South, Florida, Texas, Atlanta. So there are some recruiting ties there. Built up over time, even though he's a Midwest guy who played at Cincinnati and began his career at Cincinnati with Marcus Freeman, and they're very close. That would be that would probably surprise Notre Dame folks a little.
Yeah, Luke Fickell was the head coach, but Freeman was Fickell's defensive coordinator there for a number of years before going to Notre Dame with Brian Kelly.
All right. Thank you for that, Bobby. Now, Jerry, if you'll tell us the latest in recruiting, I would appreciate that.
I can't. By the way, Blake, should you have to do the Joy Mode read with the War Stick shirt on? I don't know. I just thought about that. All right. I'm sure Bobby like that. All right. Anyways, Javian Osborne has announced his official visit to Texas June 13th through 15th. Bobby, I had to get you going this morning. I figured the coffee wasn't enough. Javian Osborne's official visit is scheduled to Texas for June 13th through 15th. But we want to take a look at other running backs today because that's two running backs and we haven't talked about Amari Latimer in a while. He's been busy with basketball over at Sandy Creek High in Tyrone, Georgia. He can really shoot it. Somebody's asked about Jamie French. He's on campus and doing well. This is Amari Latimer, bigger back, Bobby. I think a little bit in the mold of a Katron Allen at Penn State from high school, seeing Katron at IMG. But Javian Osborne, June 13th through 15th official visit. And then we have Xavier Crowell already scheduled for his official visit June 6th through 8th. And then Amari Latimer, that downhill power back. He's about 5'11 and a half, 210, going to be 225 when he's all said and done. But a guy that Tashard Choice has been on for a while. He's been on campus a couple times. He was not at junior day because of basketball. Again, he's a good basketball player. We're going to run through people, man. This is a really good competition in Metro. Atlanta area, by the way. These are not slow guys or small guys he's running up against. But a really good downhill back. He is in play certainly for the Longhorns, as is Derek Cooper out of Chaminade Madonna. I made a call on that yesterday again, and people continue to tell me they think that Derek Cooper will be on campus at some point this spring. So I think those 4 running backs and then are really the focus right now. And if there's a fifth that really comes into focus, it would be KJ Edwards at Carthage. But I think right now, Osborne, Xavier Crowell, Amari Latimer, who we're watching now, and Derek Cooper are probably the top 4.
I get it. We watched you and I during Talking Ball, Jerry, last night, watched Javian Osborne. The difference here with Latimer is he looks like I would compare him more to Cedric Baxter. He looks like he's not necessarily super fast to the hole, but he has that downfield feel to him that he can still break it and still be a tough runner and maybe get some people glancing off of him. After watching Javian Osborne and Xavier Crowell, I don't know where these guys rank on the Texas board, but the reality of it is I think that Texas has a good mix of high-end prospects that they're in on. I don't think any of them are not necessarily deserving of their rating, very high rating, if that makes sense. So whether or not it's a jump cut guy like Javian Osborne or a guy that kind of slithers like Crowell or more of a true downhill guy like Latimer and Cooper to that point, it'll be interesting to see which one tries to go with Texas and which one fits Texas best, right, Jerry? That's the other thing. Like, I don't know right now who fits Texas the best of these guys. Maybe all of them. I mean, Najee Harris is a guy that this guy runs a little bit like too, and he's worked out fine for Steve Sarkisian in the past. So we'll see.
I think the one thing I'm seeing so far is Texas is going to get a downhill back in this class.
No matter
whether it's Amari Latimer, whether it's Crowell. Derek Cooper's kind of a freak. He's over by himself, and we'll see where that goes after he visits. But I like where Texas sits with Latimer right now. He had 2 uncles that played at Miami. I think they are a competition, as well as Tennessee, Auburn are competition for him. But he has a really good relationship with Tashard Choice. So again, this is a downhill guy. And I know in the chat, that's probably really popular with people, right? The downhill back that can get the short yardage. You can run him in the goal line. He has really good hands, plays some linebacker, tough kid. Again, really good basketball player. And again, I think his speed is a little deceptive on this tape. I'll say that because Atlanta metro area, I think, is the fastest high school football in the country right now. These kids can really run in Atlanta metro area. So I think he's a little deceptive. He's a quicker guy than fast, but he plays against fast, bigger athletes.
Going to be interesting who they take at running back and who they can get, right? Because, I mean, these are all highly competitive recruitments. Highly competitive.
That's Miguel. I agree.
Yeah.
Texas in a good spot heading into official visits. Now you got to close a couple of these guys out, but they're on. I believe they're on the right guys.
Hey, and we're gonna stay on the running backs here for just a moment because we got a couple of questions, like this super chat from Jack. He said, "Love the running back updates. My question is, how many would we take? Only 2 is normal, or could we take a third?" Jerry,
2. I think the number is going to be 2 with Sark and those guys. And anytime, like if you're recruiting these guys ranked this high, it's going to be hard to ever pull off 3. Now, if you took maybe a mid-ranked kid as a third, I think you get away with that, but it'd be very difficult in today's day and age, Bobby, from even an NIL perspective, to go on 3 guys.
They're not going to do that. I mean, look, it's 2, and we'll see where it goes. What they might do, and this is a year that they might do it, Jerry, and we've talked about it with the portal, is they might take a third through the portal to backfill the upper class, given that Jaden Blue went pro a year early. The year after, Jonathan Brooks went a pro a year early as well.
Yeah.
After the year after, Bijan Robinson went pro. I mean, so you look at that from that perspective, and I think that That's where you backfill, but not necessarily do you take 3 from the high school ranks. I think you may backfill it from the portal ranks.
So somebody in the chat asked about Tredarian Ball, the Texas high running back who is committed to Oregon. I talked to him a few weeks ago, and he has not had any communication with Texas. I think Texas is really focused on these guys we just talked about. And if there's a fifth that becomes really in focus, it would be KJ Edwards.
Tredarian Ball's really good, by the way.
He's a good player for sure. It's a really good year at running back in the state of Texas. A really good year.
Definitely. And then one other one, just because we've been asked this a lot today, like from CW, for example, he even says, I know y'all have been asked a lot, but who do you think are the best? With so many names, it's hard to know who's who. So if you had to name 3, Jerry.
It's 4. It's 4, isn't it, Jerry? That's what we're getting down to.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. It's kind of like it's in the eye of the beholder at running back, Bobby. It's also scheme fit, who you like the best. I mean, look, there's one guy out there that if the people are right in South Florida, if he puts up the times expected, he goes probably to another level. The Derek Cooper kid at Shaman on Madonna, they think is going to run in the high 10.4s, low 10.5s. If he does that at 6'1", 205, that takes you to a different stratosphere. And I know it's a track different than football, but all right, when you're already a football player and if you run 10.48, 10.5 flat at 205 pounds, that puts you in a different category. I think Javian Osborne, if you categorize these guys, who's the best back under 200 pounds we've seen? I would think that's Javian Osborne on tape, right? Amari Latimer's a bigger back. Xavier Crowell's a recent reclass, has great balance and power. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. I think it's going to go back and forth on who has guys ranked where. That's why I just say Texas. I think Texas in on the right guys, though.
Yep, it's those 4.
Yeah,
that you really. I mean, now KJ Edwards at Carthage is another one that we're monitoring, and we'll see whether or not his visit comes through. Some people are reporting a visit there, but here's the one. I mean, it's Cooper in South Florida, Javian Osborne at Forney, who Texas loves a lot, Xavier Crowell out of Alabama, and Amari Latimer out of the Atlanta area at Sandy Creek. Those are if you want to know the names and memorize the names, it's those 4.
All right, guys, we got a special guest coming in just a moment. But first, let's talk about Tecovas.
Oh, man. Look, Brent Venables, this read is not for you because the way Sark introduced this Tecovas to you in the angle of attack was not – Tecovas, that's not good for you, right? But anywhere worth going is worth going in good boots. Born in Texas in 2015, Tecovas are handcrafted with every stitch on point. Tecovas boots are made for a good time and a long time. I love the fact that they're already broken in for comfort right out of the box. Not only they smell good, they feel good right out of the box. And Tecovas makes it easy for anyone to find their favorite boot. With all kinds of sizes and styles, Tecovas are simply the best boot around. I really like that they can either be daily boots or you can feel dressed up with them. Right now, get 10% off at tecovas.com/Texas football, all caps, when you sign up for emails and texts. That's 10% off at tecovas.com/Texas football, all caps. With Tecovas, best in the West guarantee, you get free returns and exchanges for 30 days. Again, that's tecovas.com/Texas football. See site for details, even if Brent Venables needs to have one removed.
Thank you, Jerry. And I'm going to bring in our special guest, but let you make the introduction.
Yeah, so Craig Halbert of ESPN, longtime friend. We worked together for years. Hobbs is over ESPN National Recruiting, is the voice of high school football for ESPN, Under Armour game, Under Armour camps, which have started. What did I miss, Hobbs? Anything?
Yes. I'm impressed. You said special guest. I was like, did these guys double book? Screw me over?
Yeah, exactly. So colleague with Tom Luganbill, they're best buds. I've worked with these guys for years. So we thought it'd be fun to bring Craig on, get things from his perspective. Texas ranked #1 class in the country and all other things. But thanks for joining us, Hobbs.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Good to be back with you.
Craig, can I start? Do you mind that you guys ranked Texas #1 recruiting class, I believe. What is it about the Texas recruiting class that you guys like so much?
Yeah, we initially coming out of the early signing period, we had Oregon, and then even though most things are done by the time December comes to a close, the quarterback wound up flipping back to Cal. Dallas Wilson wound up going to Florida, so that class shifted a little bit. And the thing I love about Texas, and I kind of thought they were on the cusp last year, is we're in a transfer heavy, portal heavy time right now, but I think there's good and bad things. I'm not necessarily a big fan of programs that turn over 6% of your roster. And if you're recruiting well, you shouldn't have to do that. And I thought Texas did a brilliant job last year with the way they had a needed wide receiver, went out and basically used a portal just to bring in a handful of receivers that actually pay dividends this year. And they're doing the same this year, just now pivoting to the defensive line. But I love the blend of high school players and using the portal to supplement what they need, almost like you should in the NFL with free agency. So, and then listen, anytime you can build a class around D linemen, you're losing some receivers there with Bond and Golden, and you go out and you get two of the best receivers in the country. You get absolute Swiss Army knife and Terry. I really like this class, and I think that they're doing what they need to do in order to kind of make that next step towards maybe getting in that national championship game.
There are a couple of players, Craig, that y'all ranked at ESPN because everybody, look, all the rankings are out there for everybody to watch and look at. But there were three players in particular that ESPN was decidedly higher on than other groups in the industry. So I'll just put it that way. Jamie French was one of them. You had him number 26 overall in the country. He's the wide receiver out of Jacksonville. KJ Lacey, the quarterback out of Mobile. You guys had him the number 115 ranked player overall in the country. Nobody else even had him in their top 250 or 300. And then Nick Brooks, the big offensive lineman that we're already hearing really good things of, by the way, down in Georgia. You ranked him number 142. Nobody else had him in the top 300 in the country either. What was it about those three guys in particular, if you don't mind? Tell us what you saw there that kind of made you maybe a little higher on them than other people around the country that you've heard mixed reviews on and stuff.
Yeah, well, listen, you've been at this a long time, Bobby. You know that it's not an exact science, but I think I'll start with KJ first of all, because obviously he's a quarterback. I'm sure you guys have seen him in person. He's not very physically intimidating. He's kind of a slight build, but he was really interesting to me. There were a few factors because we actually had him in the Under Armour game, and leading into the game, the recruiting process could be long. And I know coaches do this, and we could do it on this side too. At times you start to second guess yourself in some guys where things begin to change and you go, do we have this guy ranked right? Is he the right fit for the game? Did we invite too early? A few things stuck out to me about him. Obviously, for those who don't know, he went to Saraland High School where Ryan Williams, the standout receiver for Alabama, went. So you go, okay, how good is KJ Lacey, or just how good was Ryan Williams, and did he make KJ Lacey good? Well, if you go and look at KJ's stats from this past season, sans Ryan Williams, they were almost identical in terms of the production that he put up. So I look at that and I go, all right, you know what? This is a really good football player who just happened to have an elite receiver, and obviously very smartly he used him. But even when he lost him, he was able to go ahead and still put up those type of numbers and perform. One of the other things that kind of put me at ease too, and you guys know me better, and listen, they have, Arch Manning there. And in 27, they got Diabell, who's an outstanding quarterback in the state of Florida. So you have basically maybe the most popular quarterback in all of college football ahead of you. You have a 5-star behind you. You're sandwiched in the middle, as you mentioned, Bobby, not overly highly touted generally across the board. It would be easy, and we've seen kids cut bait and go, you know what, this is not for me. I don't want to kind of get into a dogfight in terms of getting my position. He didn't cut bait, and I think Texas sees maybe what we see in him because they didn't try, you guys would know better to run him off, you could very easily change that class. So I think the mere fact that he's willing to come in there and compete, and they see enough of him that they want him at least in their quarterback room as an option, I think speaks volumes. And when he got down to the Under Armour game, there was some bad weather. And once he got there, he came in late because of the weather. It got delayed. that next night, it was about 9:00. You've been down to Under Armour game, Jerry. We're usually in the room kind of working late. He was next door on the board with the offensive coordinator trying to kind of get caught up on things. So that's one of those little behind the scene things. You go, all right, he could have easily got down to Orlando late, kind of go hang out with the other guys. He knew he had to kind of make up a little ground, and he found an opportunity there at like 9:00 at night to get on the board and try to do those things. So you piece all those little things together. I feel comfortable about KJ, and who knows what the long-term plans are, but I definitely think that he's a Power 4 quarterback. So that's my long-winded answer there on KJ.
Who's the comp for him, Craig? Like, is it Bryce Young? Is it? I mean, I know it's not Kyler Murray. I mean, those shorter quarterbacks everybody wants to talk about. Who's the comp for him, in your opinion?
Oh, you put me on the spot here. I don't want to go Bryce Young. And he's mobile, but really not a dual threat quarterback. Kind of one of those shorter quarterbacks. I think he could kind of want to be a guy maybe like in a Dylan Gabriel mold.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Put me. So I kind of
mobile, but not necessarily runner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hobbs, that's a good one because everybody says Bryce Young for him, but nobody. That's a really good. I think Phil, as QB country, Philip Morris, Morris, who trains him, might agree with that based on him being on this show. I think that was really good.
What about Jamie French and Nick Brooks, Craig?
Yeah, I think Nick Brooks is kind of the wild card. He's an interesting guy. He's kind of been around. He was out in Georgia a little bit, kind of moved back. He's I remember we had him at a camp like 2 years ago, and he was doing one-on-ones, and I remember being over there, and he looks at me and he goes, "Don't walk away. I'm going to win a bunch of reps." He's got like that type of like swagger to him, and which could swing a lot of different ways. But he's a big body. He's got all the physical tools. He's one of these guys that I wonder. I hope he kind of stays focused. And Jerry uses this term all the time: maximizes his ability. If he does, he's an elite tackle. I also feel like he's a guy though maybe can get easily distracted. So I think in terms of he belongs in at 300, in my opinion, based off of his physical tools. I would have loved to have seen him a little bit more throughout the course of high school, but when he wound up kind of leaving kind of Georgia, we kind of didn't get a chance to really see him again. But again, he's a big body. He's got all the physical tools. He believes in his ability, but like I said, I think he's a wild card in this guy. I think he's a guy who could be all SEC in 3 years. I think he could be a guy that's in a different program in 3 years. He can go.
Yeah, it's just a wide chasm between hit and miss. What about Jamie French? I got to ask you there because this is a guy that y'all rank number 26 in the country. Someone I'm sure you've seen in person. What do you make of the receiver out of Jacksonville, Craig?
Yeah, listen, I think he's really smooth, and he's a guy too. For those people who think sometimes maybe we only rank guys based on the Under Armour game style, he wound up flipping away from us and leaving us and stuff like that. So, it's just strictly kind of based off of just ability. And remember him coming to Future 50 and future camps. He's just so smooth in the way that he moves and his fluidity. He's got really good speed. I'm actually surprised people don't kind of have him higher. I think he kind of maybe went off the radar a little bit his senior year. So maybe you think that he's not one of those young men who thinks he has it all figured out already. But when we have seen him, he's always been impressed. I think the film has been good, but just that type of fluidity, the feet, you see there, the ability, even in the press, to be able in that clip to be able to get off the ball, kind of make separation. So I love him. And listen, between Lockett and some of the other receivers they got in this thing, I think it's interesting though with some of those losses there through those guys moving on, Golden and Bond and stuff like that they're going to possibly rely a little bit heavier on some of these young guys. But I wouldn't put him in that elite Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, I think Dakaria Moore this year type of immediate like elite college wide receiver. But I certainly think that the way he's able to run routes and move, that he could be a 15 to 20 catch guy for them this year.
Interesting.
Hey, Craig, I wanted to ask you this. Y'all had Sark on, I think, last week around signing day. But did he have anything? What did he have to say for the people in the chat that didn't see that? And kind of what did you ask him anything? Kind of what was in that conversation?
Well, to me, the intriguing one there is Jonah Williams. He just because a couple of factors. A, he's a two-sport athlete in college, which is always interesting. with baseball, I'm sure as your fans know, being the other sport, and actually they're already kind of in baseball. And then how do you use him? He's a big body. He tests out. We had him at that Houston camp a year ago, and he's one of those players who kind of balked at wanting to run a 40, and we Dr. Phil'd him into actually doing it and wound up ripping off one of the best 40s of the position, like a laser 4.5. So, he's kind of a great reminder too. Some of those young guys just believe in your ability. If you're an elite athlete, you're an elite athlete. But, it was interesting because I think he's a guy who could play right away because of the versatility he brings. And I asked Sark about that. And it sounds like baseball is, that they've got a plan, but right now for the spring, baseball is the priority. So it's going to be a little bit, I think, until he shifts over to football. So that could potentially, stunt his kind of development and integration into football. But they seem to be okay with it. And obviously you get an athlete of that type of caliber, and you're going to kind of make it work. I do think, the good thing is, though, unlike maybe track where you're getting hamstrings and stuff like that, I think at least baseball, you're like, all right, he's over there. But it's probably a low injury risk in terms of maybe something happening to him before you get him. And then how you use him. He could be a safety. I think he views himself as a safety. We had him at linebacker. We moved him back to safety. I think he views himself there. But you can do so many things with him because of his size and his range. You can move him down the box and how they cover him. And I think, listening to Sark on signing day, I think he was excited about different type of options. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're even with baseball, if they're looking at him coming in as as a potential early contributor guy, as he should be as a 5-star.
Again, joined by Craig Hauber of ESPN National Recruiting, voice of Friday Night Football for ESPN, and one of the guys over the Under Armour game and Under Armour camps. So I got to take you a different direction, Craig, because we worked together for a long time. You've been doing this, I believe, since 07 now, 08 class?
06 first one.
06 class. Who's the best prospect you've seen?
It still kind of goes back to just the initial wow factor. And the one I remember wanting to bring people from ESPN to his games to see him because it was almost unworldly is Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah.
He was, at the time I was living in Charlotte, probably about 20 minutes away from South Point High School in the Rock Hill area in South Carolina. So it was perfect because I was able to get over there every other week and watch practice and stuff like that. He was such a freak in terms of his length. And he was really one of the first players who I really kind of remember. We're in such an accelerated calendar now where we're evaluating 9th graders and your 8th graders and stuff like that. But, Clowney was the 11 class, if I believe. So really kind of 09, but he was really kind of one of the first players I remember where it was just like, this guy's only a sophomore going his junior year, but it's like, he's a difference maker. I think he may have been the first player we ever invited to the Under Armour game that was so clearly an underclassman. Obviously, it may seem foreign now with the way that recruiting goes, but his length and the way he can run, and he was also a pretty good high school tight end, but just there aren't very many players who are built with him. And if you weren't familiar with him back then, you watch him in the NFL, it never really reached what you thought because of injuries and kind of the bouncing around and the kind of elusive freak that we thought he may be never really kind of panned out in the NFL. But in high school, he was just different because he kind of looked like he did in the NFL when he was in high school.
Let me ask you this, Craig. You've been doing this for 15, 20 years now, 20 years, I guess. The question I would have is, what have you seen as a trend in recruiting? Like for me, I've been doing this a long time as well, 30 years. The receivers now are so much better than they were 20 years ago, 25. I mean, they come out and you mentioned Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, DeCorey Moore, those guys, they're coming out better than ever before. What are some of the major trends you're seeing and have seen kind of go on other than the NIL world? And
Yeah.
What about on field of play? Like, are they missing something? Or are we getting more of something? What things like that?
Yeah, kind of running parallel to what you said. I don't know if there's been any position that has really evolved more than the tight end position. You go back 20 years, you kind of looked at your tight end as that inline kind of blocker guy. You get a guy who can maybe stretch the seam. You got a real weapon. You look at the guys now, like in this upcoming class, like the Caden Prothros and some of those tight end, they're almost like, receivers and big bodies. We've seen the NFL, like they're almost a little bit of the dinosaur if you are that traditional kind of Y who lines up and you come in on blocking downs. They're really guys who can detach, flex out, and stuff like that. So I've really seen that. Feels like that position has really kind of evolved to what, when I was growing up, what that position was really like. So, which, a little bit to your, kind of like the receivers, just, and that, a lot of that has to do with the evolution of the offenses, which is everybody spread. So more 7-on-7 is more prevalent. So now even though those guys who are now 6'4", 230 pounds, they're used to running these routes, being in that type of culture. The other thing, the big change too, and the one I maybe don't like so much, Bobby, is the specialization. I'm a huge fan of multi-sport athletes in high school. I think it's beneficial. I usually, Jerry had mentioned, I'm very lucky to kind of do the ESPN high school games. So to be able to pick high school coaches' brains on week to week, I always ask, do you allow players to play multiple sports? And most of them say, yeah. And I love to hear that. And, when you hear different reasons why, I think it stops from overuse injuries. I think it stops from fatigue. I've heard coaches give examples that they make a lot of their players do other sports because if they're a star in a football team where they got to go to basketball and be the 12th man on the bench or something like that, it humbles them a little bit to realize, this is what it's like to be a part of a team and not be the guy. So I think there's a lot of positives but I think nowadays, especially at the quarterback position, so I don't think there's anything wrong with getting ahead and working hard, but just kind of walking away from other sports and kind of drilling down at the high school level, particularly. I'm not necessarily a big fan of that, and I kind of wish we'd kind of go back to seeing more focus on trying to do different things, especially at the high school level. Unless at college, I get it. Unless you're a freak like a Jonah Williams, something like that. You should drill down on one, but the high school level, I think you should be doing multiple sports, at least 2, if not 3.
I think I could not agree more. We just had 2 Super Bowl quarterbacks from the state of Texas that played multiple sports, by the way.
Yeah.
In high school. I mean,
you'll see it when the draft comes up. They usually put up a stat. Usually of those 32 picks, usually 25 of them, they'll say we're multi-sport athlete high school. So hopefully that rings for some of these young men and they continue to do it.
Yep.
Hey,
usually
Craig,
it's track or basketball.
Yep.
Not baseball's odd with Jonah Williams, right? That's a little
odd. Yeah. Baseball is odd. And wrestling, I see a lot of line, but it's also a heavy injury thing. Is like, but again, even I love that one coach's thing. It always wrong with me. Like even if you're not the guy and you don't play, it's just good to see it from a different perspective and to kind of maybe do some other drills and stuff like that. So even if you're not the guy, I think it's just good to be on a team and kind of just get a different perspective and do some different things for a couple of months a year.
Now, to this point right there, what you just put up on the screen.
9 high school multi-sport and athleticism of Super Bowl active rosters. 9%, only 9% out of 106 players, I guess.
Yeah.
So 10 probably played football only. 91% 2+ sport, 45% 3+. And then track and field, 65%. That's a crazy stat, Blake.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up. And Craig, I think that goes to what you're talking about.
Hey, Craig, you mentioned Caden Prothro. I think you saw him last weekend at the Under Armour camp in Atlanta. He's making an official visit to Texas June 20th. Him and Mark Bowman are kind of the 2 tight ends on the board. So first part is, did you get a chance? How much did you watch Prothro last weekend? 1. And 2, Rod Babers, we all talk about this on shows all the time. What's the most talented area in the country you go to now? Through the high school games, through Under Armour camps? Because for us, it's Metro Atlanta.
Yeah, well, I think it's just, to me, it's I've said it on air before. It's just Georgia. I always like to say, if you put the proverbial gun to my head and said, hey, you could only recruit one state in this country, what would it be? And I had to push all my chips into one state. It would be Georgia, just because there's everything there. Like, you look at California, it's more the skill guys, quarterbacks, receivers. I think Florida, they come out a little bit raw just because they don't have the same type of maybe financial investment in high school football like they do in the state of Texas. But also it's getting harder and harder to find big men in Florida too, especially along the offensive line. We're getting ready to go down there for the Under Armour camps. It's just, trying to fill those camps with viable G5 and Power 5, Power 4 linemen is tough. I spent a very brief time and it was valuable to me in my career, but I GA'd at Tarleton State a long time ago. So I got to live in Texas and and go out and recruit in Texas and see the passion and resources that are put into it. And I think because of that too, I think a lot of times Texas players maybe come out a little closer to their ceiling than other states. But I just think you look at Georgia, especially with the population boom, you could find quarterbacks there. We've seen a great group of quarterbacks. You could find skill guys. You could find linemen. So I think not that necessarily it's any more talented. I just feel like it's the most well-rounded state in terms of population, depth, talent, and just being able to really just find elite players at every position, where maybe the other big three, being Florida, Texas, and California, may have some a slight deficiency in other areas that Georgia doesn't have or hasn't had.
I think Texas can have issues on the defensive line in particular. Everything else I feel pretty good about. And I do think that if you're looking for a quarterback, there's no better place to go than Texas, because there's going to be 12 of them every year. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, look, right now, OU's getting ready to start a guy that didn't have many offers coming out of high school, and now he's the number one portal quarterback and coming from Washington State to Oklahoma. Craig, you look at this, and you've been to a bunch of games. You mentioned the state of Texas. You have a favorite stadium that you've been to? If you lived in Stephenville, Texas, at Tarleton State, then you've had to have been some high school games in Texas. You have a favorite high school stadium in the state of Texas?
Try to see Texas. They're all like great. It's, because when you do high school games, like, you could be fighting for space in a tiny rickety booth. I mean, I've called a game from a scissor lift. So when you go to Texas, it's like being on vacation. It's like, you're going to probably be at a Four Seasons, because they all got big booths and everything. And a lot of those are like the, ISDs, a multi-use kind of stadium. But listen, when it got built, with the crack in the foundation, it wasn't a good start. But listen, we did do a game in Allen. That's a really beautiful stadium. We have our camp this coming Sunday, the Under Armour camp in Dallas at Melissa, and I've yet to be there. And I mean, just looking at the pictures, looking at that indoor facility is amazing. So to pick out, one, I know where the games where Geyer plays. I think they share their stadium with a few teams. That was a really beautiful stadium. Probably nationally, the one I may like the best is Bishop Gorman's. I really like it because it's not very big, and they've been very successful. So they pack it in. They got a little bit of the the facility right off to the side with the scrolling kind of board. You can see the Vegas Strip in the background from the booth and stuff like that. So I just think it's a neat environment. So it's always one of my favorites as well to kind of go to.
Gonna have the replay on the Sphere now.
Exactly. Yeah.
In Vegas.
All right, that is Craig. We know you got to get running. Thank you very much for the time, Craig Hawbert, ESPN National Recruiting, voice of high school football for ESPN, Under Armour camps, Under Armour game, all that. And we'll see you here in a few weeks, Craig.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Take care of yourself, Craig. Thanks. Good stuff. Fun.
Great guy.
Yeah, Tarleton State, man. Wow.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Craig played defensive line in small college football, coached in college for a while before he got talked into going into this business with Tom Luganbill and the guys over at ESPN. They do a great job, man. And he's because he's the voice of high school football. I mean, that was a great question, Bobby, because he goes everywhere. He's been to all these stadiums. So I didn't expect Bishop Gorman. I've been there once, but I've never sat in the booth and called a game there or anything. So that's pretty cool. That gives you a different perspective.
I will say this. He named the megaplexes in the state of Texas because that's where he goes, right?
That's where they go.
He doesn't go to Jacksonville High School in the
Longview. Longview's like
he
my
doesn't.
favorite stadium.
Yeah. Hey, let's say thank you to a couple of our sponsors real quick, if you don't mind. I'll start with our folks over at Babbel. Time to talk about Babbel, the extremely popular language learning app. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by more than 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. More than 16 million people have used Babbel thus far. I've been using it to improve my Spanish. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off of subscriptions at babbel.com babbel.com/ontexas. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/ontexas, spelled BABBEL.com/ontexas. Babbel.com/ontexas. Rules and restrictions may apply. Get started now. 16 million people have used Babbel already.
So a couple things for you guys.
Real quick, Jerry,
Yeah.
hang on 1 second there, because I also need to let everyone know about Cure,
Sorry to
if you
interrupt
don't
the horse
mind.
stick.
And then I'll let you take it away. All right, Cure is a plant-based, hydrating electrolyte drink mix with no added sugar. It's natural, delicious, and it's convenient. It's a very convenient way to keep you and your whole family hydrated without the artificial stuff. I told y'all yesterday, I'm very selective on what I put in my body, so Cure is right up my alley. It's made with clean ingredients, which means you can stay healthy and stay energized without the crash. It's also doctor approved and safe for the whole family, from adults to kids ages 1 and up. Hydration is the key to feeling your best, and Cure makes it easier than ever. I drink it every single morning to start my day, usually right here on Coffee and Football. I got it mixed up right there. It tastes great, and they offer 7 amazing flavors that you'll love. It's also convenient. You take it with you anywhere. They send you this bag right here. Each bag contains 14 on-the-go packets that you just dump into a bottle of water. And hydration goes beyond just drinking water. It's about replenishing the electrolytes we lose, whether that's through sweat, sleep, alcohol, or daily activities. Water alone isn't enough to do the job. That's why you need to try Cure, the electrolyte drink mix that tastes as amazing as it makes you feel. And for OTF listeners, they're offering 20% off your first order. Stay hydrated and feel your best by visiting curehydration.com/ontexas. Use promo code ONTEXAS at checkout. That's curehydration.com/ontexas and use code ONTEXAS for 20% off your first order. Now then, Jerry, take it away.
Yeah, so we're going to play a tweet here, a video of Nick Townsend. So
Yes.
I mentioned this on the show yesterday. I put the tweet up for those that didn't see it yesterday, but we wanted to show Nick Townsend, Bobby, running his 10-6 split in the 4x1. He is the last leg of this, and I'll kind of take us through
Which one is he? Which one is he here, Jay? Because I looked at this yesterday and couldn't figure out which one he was.
Yeah, so it's going to be on top of the screen on the last handoff. He is going to be coming way from behind. So this is first leg. We're going to second leg. This is the first track meet of the season for Dekaney. Bobby, I don't know if you saw this. He ran a 21.75 200 meters in the first meet of the year at 228 pounds. So now we're in the third leg. They're going to hand off here on the turn, and the big, large human running track that catches the guy way out in front. Here he comes. That's Nick Townsend.
Oh, he's the outside. He's that guy that's just catching him?
Yes.
Right there.
Holy Jesus.
That's a 10-6 split, which is about a 10.85 to 10.9. Probably 10.85.
Wait, can you rewind that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just rewind that part.
Fully automatic time. This is why I rank this guy 5-star in our rankings, guys. This dude is a freak. I mean, he is 6'3.5", 228, running a 10-6 split in the first track meet of the year. He backed it up with a 21.75 200. They think he's going to run low 21s. If he hits low 21s, he could qualify for state in the 200 meters at 225 pounds. I don't think that's ever been done before. Not in Texas. Now, Nick Harbor did it, the freak show at South Carolina. It's a track guy playing football. But that is, I wanted to play that because that's kind of wild stuff that Nick Townsend did in the first track meet of the year, not the district meet. That was track meet 1. So where's he headed this year?
He ate some ground in the first 10 yards, man.
Yep.
And then he just powered through it. I literally was trying to figure out which one he was. And then now that you say it and kind of walk me through it, it's pretty obvious. Hey, Jerry, going back to something that Craig Halbert said, I want to get your take on this. Nick Brooks. I want to talk specifically about him and his comment there. Too good a body and athleticism to not put in that top 250.
100%.
That, to me, sounds a lot like Cam Williams.
Yep.
Cam Williams was too big a body, too athletic to not. I mean, he played high school basketball at 360 pounds. I mean, not to be in the top 250. Now, Tavondre Sweat, probably the same way in some. It's up to those guys, though, to then go make something of themselves. But when he ranks that guy, Nick Brooks, in the top 150 in the country, and nobody else does, it's pretty clear why he's doing it. It's the upside. And there aren't that many guys that big out there every year.
No.
And so he's betting on that side, just no different than what Texas is betting on. Same thing. I mean, the University of Texas took him for the same reason in part. So interesting about Nick. I thought that was something that folks could take away from that. I like his reasoning a lot.
And that's why we ranked him here at OTF. We do our rankings different because we're not going to run out 300 rankings of national players. We ranked him as a 4-star plus. A 4-star plus, what I kind of came up with our ranking system, a 4-star plus is a top 150 type prospect in America. And I totally agree with them on him. I saw him his senior year at Grayson. He's dropped 20 pounds. He has worked hard. His senior tape, I thought, especially after he got himself in shape, that the problem Nick has had here's the problem Nick's had, which is now not going to be a problem for him, is he was in Atlanta area as a sophomore in high school, moved back up to Iowa where he was his freshman year for his junior year. It was around his mom's work. So he's up there as a junior. Then he moves back to Atlanta area and goes to Grayson as senior. He missed a lot of off-season summertime. And for a big kid, that's important. So that's the one thing to take into account with him. But if you watch his senior tape chronologically, man, his last half of his senior tape, and they went on in one state and beat Carrollton, was really high-level stuff to me. And having seen him in person, I'm hearing he's down 20 to 30 pounds now from the start, 30-ish pounds from the start of his senior season. I think he's got a real chance, guys. I think Nick Brooks is he's got a real chance, and I think he's gonna my piece on that is he's gonna play up to that ranking and maybe then some, based on what we're hearing early on. Joshua Rain asked a good question, and we're about to do a little something different with recruiting too. I think you guys will like. A little behind,
Jerry. Read it.
A little behind. Have we had an athlete like Nick Townsend lately? He's a freak athlete. That's a really good question, Bobby. I mean, 6'3.5", 225, 230. He ran a 10.9 200 fully automatic time at the district meet his junior year at 235 pounds. I mean, there aren't many of those guys walking around in America. Again, and when you watch his tape, and I've got him making a senior huddle so we can play it, because he's the one that doesn't really care. He has his game clips. He's like, I'm going to Texas. I don't really care about that. I just want to play ball. But I told him last week, I want a senior huddle so we can play it on the show. So if his parents are listening, I think they do, get him to make a senior huddle for us. But I think the guy, Bobby, I think the guy's a 5-star prospect. I really do. And look, those guys have to go perform. But man, 6'3.5", 225. He's just as good at linebacker as he is tight end. He's the short snapper, the deep snapper, kickoff return, pump block. He literally is like Quandre Diggs. He did or Matthew Golden did at Klein Kane. He did anything you needed him to do to go win a football game. And he's actually a talented snapper. It wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't like the number 2 snapper at Texas at some point. Bobby, I mean, he's a little different now.
Yeah, I'm all in. Jonah Williams is a big plus athlete too.
Yeah,
that's what we talked about. Michael Terry, big plus athlete. I don't necessarily think they're in the same mold as Nick Townsend, who is a bigger athlete than both of those guys. I mean, physically bigger. But it's one of those things about this class that we talked about. A lot of versatility. Another thing that Craig Harbert talked about that I enjoyed was his talk about no true tight ends anymore. Jerry, when I was ahead of the Rivals rankings and all that stuff, I mean, we had guys like Greg Olson as the number 1. Jason Witten was our number 1 tight end at one point before when I was with the National Recruiting Advisor. Here's Jason Washington. His son is definitely that new
yes
tight end.
No doubt.
I feel like when you look at that kind of thing, it's interesting that we're talking about that, because I was watching a show that had John Gruden on it earlier, like over the weekend, and he was asked to talk about his best tight ends of all time. He wouldn't put Travis Kelce in it, who's going to go down as one of the, quote, great tight ends of all time. He said because he doesn't really play tight end. Like, he's like, yeah, he's good, but he's a receiver and only a receiver. He doesn't really block anybody. And so what a tight end is has changed over time. So that was another good point from Craig.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this because Jason Washington made a comment in the chat, because we've talked about this before. Texas has had really, really good tight ends, obviously under Sark. JT Sanders obviously had to be groomed into that, because to that point, Bobby, of Gruden's point, JT Sanders was an outside X receiver and an edge player. He really wasn't a tight end. Gunnar Helm was more of a tight end. But Texas athleticism at tight end with Washington, with Nick Townsend. I mean, we'll see what happens with Mark Bowman in 26 and 26 class. Caden Prothrow, probably Mark Bowman is the best bet. Texas athleticism, size, speed combos even about to go to another level at tight end under Sark. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how those guys kind of develop in this scheme, in this system. Because, look, tight ends that can get down the field, Arch Manning's going to hit those guys. We want to do a little something different for recruiting real quick, Blake. What we wanted to do was go back, because we want to talk about Sark's recruiting philosophy and why. Thank you for that, Patrick Page, the update on Longview. I can't wait to see that. Talk about Sark's recruiting philosophy, waiting late on guys. And I was going through some huddles. This is Brad Spence's senior year at Klein Forest. And he was so improved from junior to senior year on tape, so much more physical, Bobby. I thought it would be a great time to say, it's easy to see why Brad Spence outplayed his ranking at Arkansas almost out of the gate, and why Texas wanted him in the portal. He has SEC physicality as a senior like Nick Townsend. He is destroying people physically.
Yeah, and here's the bigger piece that we really wanted to hit on by showing this, okay? And this is the first time I've seen Brad Spence's senior tape in high school. So he's 2 years removed from this. He's portaled to Texas now. But the reason we wanted to talk about this, Jerry, is it's something we discussed yesterday a little bit. It's the value of waiting until a person is a senior, a player is a senior in high school, to see if they continue to improve.
Yep.
To see if they're on the right trajectory. And so many times, and Sark is playing this game. He doesn't take too many early commitments where you don't get a chance to see these guys. Texas would have been more heavily after Brad Spence had this been his junior tape,
yes,
rather than his regular junior. I mean, that's why the value of what Sark does in waiting can be pronounced and have, very, very big outcome for the university. And so I'm a big believer in this. And Brad Spence, I'm glad you brought this up, because look, Sark is doing it differently than anybody at Texas before, basically. The only other guy that took recruiting this late into a cycle successfully was Charlie Strong.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Strong was really good late recruiter. I think he may have been even a more personal recruiter than Steve Sarkisian. But Sark is doing it more systematically, in my opinion. And senior tape matters to Steve Sarkisian in those guys. So I'm a big believer in this. I'm glad we're watching Brad Spence. He can blow up the cross block now.
Yes.
that's what I'm looking at, thinking, somebody's going to pull the H back on him, and they're not going to like the result.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see. This guy actually had SEC physicality coming out of high school as senior on tape. That's the one thing going back and looking at some of these guys. I mean, and I think a lot of times their senior year guys do get more physical. I don't know if it's a strength thing, a confidence thing, But this guy, if you just go back and watch his junior huddle versus his senior huddle, he was definitely a more physical player on contact. And maybe it's just strength and maturity, right? But he looked a lot like, if this, like Bobby said, if this was his junior tape, he'd had Alabama and Georgia and everybody after him. So, and again, this also shows his versatility, because we've talked about Brad Pitt. This is a lot of Trey Moore stuff in high school. He can also play middle backer, though. He's proved that at Arkansas because he's fast enough and reactive enough. So that is we've said it before. I think the linebacker position, and it's nothing against the guys that graduated, I think it's going to be the most improved position in the program, because Anthony Hill's naturally that junior, LaFowl junior, to Anthony Smith sophomore. You get a guy like this he's going to be an NFL prospect out of the portal. You have Elijah Barnes coming in, and Jonathan Cunningham's in the Ty Anthony Smith mold. But this linebacker group's going to have more SEC size, versatility rushing the passer. More, they can move Anthony Hill around, I think, more with Brad Spence. I'm pretty excited about Texas linebackers. But Bobby's point in the recruiting, the reason we brought this up, we talk oftentimes with people just think, oh, you're just agreeing with what Sark does because you cover Texas. No, we're not. We actually think he's doing a really, really good job in evaluation, because evaluation isn't spring of junior year. There's a lot of those guys you want then, but it's also senior year still. And I think sometimes the senior year is forgotten nowadays, and it can't be forgotten because there's too many really good players around this country. And if you don't continue to evaluate, like Kellen Wiley last class, they didn't get him, but Bobby, we watched them. They were on the right guy. If that guy doesn't end up being an NFL prospect, we'll probably be surprised. At Miami, that was a senior year evaluation. They were on the right guy. They just didn't get it. That's why it's so important.
I would add this. You mentioned SEC physicality. One of the things that I talked about when I guess it was after Sark's first year, and I started noticing a difference in how and the type of player they were recruiting is, and I talked about this on this channel. They recruit guys that play through contact at every position. Now, what does that mean? Play through contact. Well, football is a physical sport by its nature. If you can't play through contact, you're not going to be a great football player. It just doesn't work that way. So even a Xavier Worthy, who was 165 pounds dripping wet when he showed up on Texas campus, he still played through contact. Devontae Smith, the receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, 165, 170 pounds coming out of high school. Same thing, played through contact. That means Brad Spence has to play through contact. Jonah Williams has to play through contact. Alex January, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, whoever. Texas has recruited guys, in my opinion, by and large, who they know and can see can play through contact. When Texas was labeled as a soft team and or a team, say this the right way, that didn't have good linemen on both sides of the ball, I think that was part of the issue. They didn't necessarily play when they popped the pads, their feet stopped moving. And, not always and not all of them, obviously. I mean, there's some in the NFL right now that played through contact. I'm not getting it, but there were too many that didn't. Now, the preponderance of the team, very different looking team, in part because of that physicality and being able to play through contact at multiple positions. Whether that's Jalen Gilbo's another one. Even though he can get mismatched sometimes, he plays through contact, Jerry. So anyways, good stuff. Michael Taft plays through contact. Just giving you, a list of guys that don't, I'm not talking about being big and having to be, a Tavondre Sweat to play through it. All positions have to be able to play through it. DeAndre Moore, Jordan Whittington, they play through contact.
David Keith, I'm going to answer this one because he asked this right when we were talking about this real quick before we get to the next thing, Blake. Mayo Hamilton, who do you think was the biggest loss of the class amongst these three? Kevin Wynn, Hilson, or Pettijohn? Look, I'll be very surprised. I think pass rushers, I'll be very surprised if Hilson's not a good player, a quality player. I saw him enough up close. I saw Kevin Wynn too, and I think Kevin Wynn as an anchor guy can be really, really good too. But I'll be surprised. TJ Johnson went with Kellen Wiley, who I think is Kellen Wiley if he was on that list. But I think Javion Hilson, it's going to surprise me if he's not a really good player. That one will be a surprise to me. I think he's got a lot to him. All those things Bobby just talked about.
Sorry, Jay. Didn't mean to cut you off there. Before we get to some of these super chats, fellas, I'm going to take this opportunity to let everyone know about Mint Mobile. And I don't know about y'all, but I like keeping my money where I can see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers also seem to like keeping my money too. After years of overpaying for wireless, I finally got fed up from those crazy high wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks that actually cost more in the long run, and I switched over to Mint Mobile. Saved a ton of money. Now you can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages, and save a lot of money with me. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. Bring your own phone number, and of course, along with all existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for just $15 a month. And if you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop those plans at mintmobile.com/ontexas. Again, that's mintmobile.com/ontexas. An upfront payment of $45 is required for the 3-month 5 gig plan. That's equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options are available. Taxes and fees are extra. See Mint Mobile for details. And Bobby, speaking of saving money, a great way to do that is with Rocket Money.
Yeah, this is something I actually use. You sign up for something and you forget about it after a trial period ends. Then you're charged month after month after month. The subscriptions are there, but you're just not using them. Don't worry, you're not alone. I do it, and just about everyone else does too. In fact, I just learned that 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Thanks to Rocket Money, I can see all my subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones I'm not using anymore. And now I'm saving money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your monthly bills so you can grow your savings. The subscriptions part is awesome. You can see all of them in one place. For ones you don't want anymore, Rocket Money can actually help you cancel them. Rocket Money has more than 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/gameon today. That's rocketmoney.com/gameon, rocketmoney.com/gameon. Thank you for sponsoring On Texas Football. Get after those subscriptions you're not using, folks.
Like I said, guys, we got some super chats here, and let's just start at the top. We'll go way back over to Drew Lockhart. Thank you, Drew. Good morning, OTF. Who's the real competition for Calicut? Is Texas the favorite? Thanks, guys.
To be determined. I think some of the crystal balls and picks were a little premature. I think some people were trying to get ahead of recruiting on Texas in this class. Well, I was at North Shore last week. Texas has a shot. Oregon may have a shot as well. That's a lot of family just moved up to Oregon on the mom's side, I believe. I think Oregon's going to have a shot there. And we'll have to see how it plays out. Well, look, I mean, here's the other thing, Bobby. New defensive backs coach coming in at that position. And what is Calicut? Is he a safety or linebacker long term? I think some people around that recruitment think he could growing into a 230-pound linebacker one day. He's a bigger, longer frame than a Jonah Williams. But look, Bobby, Texas has new staff members coming in the secondary. So are they going to like these same guys? That's going to have to play out as well.
I think that's part of it. His size is part of it. 6'3", 215 or whatever he is. Jerry, you said the other day about how big he's going to be. My thought process here is it's if they're going to commit early, that's great. But I don't think recruiting is done anymore.
No.
I mean, so we'll see what happens. There's he definitely likes Texas. This is a safety out of North Shore, by the way. I don't think we prefaced that, but there are a lot of guys like this right now. And Texas is a hot school, but they got to get to the finish line if they really want these players. And they got to figure out how they all fit. Calicut actually would fit in this previous class, Jerry, because he's that bonus size athlete that may not be playing the position he currently is playing. And so he's a lot like the profile they had a year ago. And so I'm all for it. I hope he ends up at Texas. But I don't know where he's at actually in the process, to Jerry's point. I think it may be further out, but a lot of people may be further out than you're thinking because Texas is so hot right now. Yeah. People want to go to Texas, but what about Texas? Where is Texas in there?
And I think there's a couple of pieces to that. Sark doesn't want guys to commit and then 2 months later say, I'm going to take 5 official visits in June.
Yes.
But thanks for letting me commit. Sark wants guys, if they want Max Wright, 100% knew he wanted. By the way, Max Wright's going to join Longhorn live stream tonight and talk with Rod Babers, CJ, and the guys. So that'll be about 7:30 tonight if you want to hear from Max Wright, scheduled to be. Max Wright wanted to be a Horn, no doubt. He was done with his process. That's not a high percentage of guys, though. The June official visits, look, NIL, leverage, all of this. There's that part of it for the prospects. But then from Sark's perspective, they want guys that are done that want to be there at this point. You don't want guys committing in March and taking 4 official visits in June. Then what do you really have? You don't have anything. So there's a couple of guys that have told Texas they're coming, but they're not going to put it out. They're going to go through their couple official visits, and then they'll visit Texas on the 13th or 20th and be done with their process shortly after that. So I think there's a couple of things that factor in there as well. There's a question in the chat about Matt Stafford. Did Texas have a shot? It's funny, we discussed him yesterday. No, Texas offered, but they didn't have a shot. He was going to Georgia. His father, the former swim coach at FSU, was really maybe best friends with Mark Richt Bobby. And they were very tight. They may have been best friends, but Matt Stafford was going to Georgia with Richt.
We got some more super chats. This next one from CSN. Thank you, CSN. What connection will Mac have with the university in 2025? Bobby?
I don't know that that's been decided yet. When I talked to Mac, I guess, start of the year. I think that's when I posted that interview with him. He was going to go back and see if he could do something. He wanted to be involved with the university somehow, but I don't think that was clearly defined. And I also would say this, Mac may be trying to go back into media. And if you recall, he said that those sorts of things don't get decided until after the Super Bowl, when all the media conglomerates get together and say, okay, what's our plan for the next football season? So that's going to start happening right now, I think. And we'll see where Mac ends up in that, if he ends up in with one of those organizations, be it ESPN, Fox, etc.
And then one other one, fellas, this one from Edgar. Thank you, Edgar. He says, is there a risk that in an effort to get to the next level, like a natty appearance, Sark tinkers a tad too much and disrupts what has worked well? Look on.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. The answer is yes. I don't, but coaches are constantly tinkering. I mean, Sark tinkered with his offense this year, and the year before, right? He was forced to this year because of lack of Cedric Baxter. So, but that's what I will say this, Edgar. That's maybe what separates Sark right now from some other folks. He's got a good foundation to build from, a winning foundation. So if you can tinker a little bit, you're more likely to win than lose off of that. If you can just find one or two things. for example, Texas finds one or two things that work in the red zone, all of a sudden things change, right? The outlook changes. That's my take on that one. And more good than bad can come from that, in my opinion. You have to tinker each and every year, though. Otherwise, you're just staying stale.
And this we'll close with this, guys. Basketball, of course, big news in women's. We had Coach Vic Schaefer on yesterday. Then shortly after he came on, the new college women's college poll came out, the top 25, the AP poll, and Texas has moved up number 3, sitting at 24-2 overall. UCLA, of course, undefeated, has that number 1 spot, followed by Notre Dame. And then Texas, South Carolina, LSU, who they play later this week, and then Kentucky, who they play as well, has moved up to number 8.
What's interesting is because the SEC is so heavy in women's basketball, and then you have Notre Dame and you have UConn up on the East. And now the girl at South USC is phenomenal. Watkins, phenomenal. But sometimes I think the season UCLA is having has been lost a little bit. Now people are taking recognition of it. But because, look, you have Notre Dame, you have Texas, you have South Carolina, you have Kim Mulkey's personality, USC, Watkins is phenomenal, UConn, Gino and his team. And then the depth in the SEC, with Kentucky and then the ACC is really good. I think it's easy to get lost. Kentucky did lose last night. Get lost in kind of the season UCLA's had. Now, for the first time, they have pressure on them. So it'll be interesting to see if they run it through undefeated going into this NCAA tournament. That's really impressive because they've kind of flown under the radar compared to some other teams, but they're now the radar. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Notre Dame, I think, is the toughest matchup for Texas if they see them again in NCAA tournament. They won up in South Bend because they played that zone, and they have 2 guards who can absolutely shoot it, and one of the best players off the bouncing college basketball in the women's game.
They play Kentucky 3. Texas is 3. 3 plays 8 on Thursday in Lexington.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Texas comes back and on Sunday plays number 5 LSU. So they play the number 8 and number 5 teams in the country this week after playing the number 4 team in the country, or what was the number 2 team in the country, on Sunday. So they've got in a week's time, they play 2, 5, and 8.
And 23, because they played Vanderbilt at the time. It was ranked.
Yep. And 23 is all the way down there at 23.
But still, impressive.
Yeah.
Impressive. And we need to mention the men are playing Alabama tonight, and hopefully Nate Oates forgot this. They're really good. And Texas is going to have to play very high level. Alabama's one of the teams that has a legit shot to win this thing, and they're doing it different. Yeah, everybody's like, oh, we got to have size at guard. They have 2 6'1" guards. They have a couple 6'3" guys, but 2 6'1" guards is their centerpiece with length around it. But it's really that NBA style Nate Oates plays that is they're very, very, very good offensively. Texas will have to play at a really high level. And I will say this, if we're just talking about the NCAA tournament, which is what we're talking about right now, not about anything after the season, they can't go over this week. That over last week was a tough over because that was Arkansas at home and at Vanderbilt. This week you have Alabama at home and Kentucky at home. Now, Kentucky is not real physical, but they can really score it. So I think Texas can score the ball in Kentucky. But Alabama, it's going to take an A game from Texas tonight.
Is Tremont? I thought they really missed Tremont Mark against Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt's guards just kind of took over that game late. What's the health of Tremont Mark right now, Jerry?
I think it's going to be game time-ish, I think.
Okay. That's going to be tough. So, number 3 team in the country, and you're not going to have your premier guy at guard. It's tough.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football. I want to thank Babbel, Cure, Rocket Money, Tecovas, and Mint Mobile, all for sponsoring today's show. Thank you all for tuning in. The great questions, the super chats. Be sure to head on over to ontexasfootball.com to further the discussion. Remember, we can't be on here all the time. Become a member using promo code OTFOG. You'll get a full year for $49.95. A lot of good stuff going on over there. And it's the best way to get that quick breaking news as well. And right now, DB coach, recruiting, all kinds of stuff going on that you don't want to miss out. Again, OTFOG at ontexasfootball.com will get you a full year, $49.95.
Hey, Blake, before we leave, I want to say this and reiterate what I said at the beginning. As of this morning, I spoke with someone and texted with someone around the Notre Dame program. They do not know what Mike Mickens, the defensive back coach there, has decided or will decide at this point in time. There is, quote, some level of concern. That is a defensive back coach that Texas apparently may be targeting, also formerly of Cincinnati, where he coached guys like Sauce Gardner. So we'll see where this ends. But Texas apparently going after Mike Mickens, defensive back coach out of Notre Dame. No decision or comment yet, but Notre Dame concerned.
All right, well, we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then. Have a great day.
Thanks. Hook 'em.